Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delaila Lugo.
And I'm Jason Kwasnicki.
If Jason sounds different this episode, it's because he has a beard.
It affects the acoustics of my room, my little office. The hairs catch the sound waves as they protrude from my mouth.
This is a gaming spoiler cast where we pick a game, we play that game, we talk about that game, and hopefully you play that game and then listen to this episode about that game, because we don't want to be the ones that spoil it for you, but we want you to hear our spoilery discussion. So yeah, go if you have not played the game. Game is in the title of the episode. Go play that game and then come back to this episode and listen. Hey, I never remember who I asked last time.
It's my turn.
It's Delilah's turn.
We're talking about.
Yeah, I fucked up last time and I took it from Delilah. It's her turn.
That's okay.
I think that was the situation.
Delilah, what game did we play?
A Plague Tale: Innocence, and we're not doing this game because of the coronavirus.
No,
it's just a coincidence. I've been talking about them playing this game since December, and we also announced it last episode, which was recorded in February?
Yeah.
Or early March, before all this shit started going haywire. So it's a complete coincidence.
Just lucky happenstance. There is a at the time of this recording, there is a worldwide pandemic called COVID-19 or the coronavirus. We Delilah's been trying to get us to play this game for months, and we finally decided to do it. So that being said,
mostly due to delays.
a lot of games came out that we wanted to talk about. So that being said, shall we jump into a brief history lesson of A Plague Tale: Innocence?
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready, Jason?
It's happening.
I hate that we had all that dead air for a fucking Ron Paul joke. All right, so history of A Plague Tale: Innocence. It was developed by a French studio called Asobo Studio. This was their first original title since a racing game called Fuel that came out in 2009. Looking at their history, they mostly helped with development of games, a lot of ports, and a lot of Disney games way back when. Like
Good transition.
In the late PS2 to early PS3 time, they made a lot of Disney games. So yeah, the first original game in a decade, and they, as you will see when you play this game, assuming you've played these games as well, they wanted to make a game, and they were heavily inspired by the likes of Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. I don't know if either of you have played that.
No,
I've never heard of it.
I have played it. It's a wonderful experience. I highly recommend it. They were inspired by that game and a favorite of the podcast, The Last of Us.
I definitely see that.
Yeah, they wanted to make a narrative-driven game.
In every way, shape, and form, this game is inspired by The Last of Us.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The two child actors that played our two leads, Charlotte McBurney and Logan Hannon, they actually helped contribute to the writing process, changing lines, giving different deliveries, just kind of making the characters their own and assisting with the writing of the story. Just a little fun fact.
Wow.
Up to 5,000 rats can appear on screen.
5,000.
Yeah,
it's over 5,000.
We'll talk about the rats. But yeah, they actually wound up doing like 4 different layers of detail when rendering the rats. The ones that were furthest away from the player were basically just background images. I could kind of see that too while playing the game. It's kind of a lot to pop on the screen. Obviously, you want the things that are closest to the player, the things they can most readily see, be the most detailed. But I just thought it was an interesting tidbit. But yeah, the game was announced under the name The Plague by the publisher Focus Home Interactive. It was announced January 2017, and later that year, we got a first look at gameplay at E3 2017, and the game officially released about almost 2 years later on May 14th, 2019. This was a 2019 game, guys.
Yeah.
Amongst all the other games in 2019 that we played and talked about on the show.
So you mean to tell me that Logan Hannon chose to be an annoying little boy?
I want to find Mummy.
I want to find Mummy.
Don't make fun of Hugo. Hugo.
All right. Hugo.
Hugo. He's French.
It was Hugo.
Anyway, not what the French would have sounded like back then. Same with the British.
Yeah, and here I knew we were gonna get into this with Jason.
Well, they have no. It's just that they have very modern accents. It's a common mistake. Movies do it too, and like an American, like a non-regional American accent sounds more like a British accent would have sounded like at this time than a modern British accent does.
All right.
Huh.
So yeah, that's the history lesson. Let's talk about the game.
Yeah, so this game had such an impact on me that
it really did. Like
it did. Because like when I saw the trailers I was like, it looks okay. Like not something I plan to buy. But then I saw it on sale around Black Friday. I was like, all right, whatever. It's really cheap. Let me jump into it. I heard good things about it, but everyone that spoke about this game did not tell me just how good it was. And maybe that's just my perspective. I feel like it's a really good game, like one of the best of 2019. But it really caught me by surprise. And it also had an impact on me because after playing it for many hours in one sitting, I didn't beat the game in one sitting, but I played like almost half the game in one sitting in December. I had a dream that a bunch of puppies, like hundreds, 5,000 of them, if you will, were like in unison, like scurrying around and chasing me.
Were they
kind of like how the rats do?
Were they rendered with 4 different layers of detail?
Pretty much, yeah. In the dream, it was just like the way the rats look in the game input puppies, and that's what injected itself into my dream. It was crazy.
Did the puppies were they trying to kill you?
I don't know, but I was running away from them. I was.
It's a pretty fucked up dream.
Yeah, it was very disturbing, but that's how impactful the game was on my brain.
So you've had this dream as a reoccurring nightmare ever since. But yeah, and you kept bringing it up to us to play. I could see that you definitely were impacted by this game quite a bit.
Yeah, if I had played the game in 2019, I don't know if it would have
topped your charts.
Topped my charts, but it definitely would have been in the running.
Yeah.
So I liked it a lot. By the end, I at first wasn't very big on it. I liked it. I did like it a lot by the end. I guess before we talk about the ending, I do want to talk about the thing that probably bothered me most. I really went into this expecting much more, I guess, historical accuracy, in the sense that I hate when I don't know, it's a big problem with my own expectations where I expect something to be grounded in reality and then it introduces something supernatural, and that just bugs the shit out of me.
Yeah, and that wasn't really apparent until the very end, I feel.
Yeah. I would
everything
say until
else
about
was
halfway, or maybe 3/4 of the way through the game.
To the point where they start introducing the episanguis and the ability to manipulate the rats and all that.
Yeah. Well,
because the alchemy stuff I thought was actually really cool, and it was grounded in things that would have been available at the time. You know, mixing alcohol, sulfur, saltpeter, things like that, to create and manipulate fire.
But even like manipulating the rats with the episanguis and creating I just took them as lures. You throw a thing that the rats are lured to, and you can sneak by. But didn't bother me. Just this whole idea of the macula being within Hugo and him being able to control these rats, and having this big epic face-off against Vitalis at the end. No matter how epic and huge power fantasy it was just like, man, I really wanted this to be a grounded game.
Well, no, yeah, the end definitely threw me off. Sorry. No, go ahead, Jason.
All I was going to say was at first I thought they were just going to keep the macula to be some kind of basically just a belief that when in reality Hugo just really just carried he was kind of the inception of the virus itself, or the plague, what have you. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I gotcha.
I thought that it was just going to be like a superstitious belief that because he was patient zero, if you will, he was some kind of prophesized chosen one, whatnot.
Yeah, I thought he was going to play a similar role like Ellie in The Last of Us, where he had some sort of...
Ringing the sirens.
Sorry. Fuck.
Beep, beep, beep. It's
so
okay.
hard.
I know. It's going to be really hard to dance around that.
It's essentially the same story, just instead of the fatherly archetype that we've seen in so many games recently, it actually plays more of a motherly one, which I really liked. I like the matron trope, which we don't see enough of in fiction. That's why I like stories like moving over to a different medium, Aliens, Terminator, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's my biggest complaint, and I admit that for that to be a complaint, I'm more so complaining about what the game wasn't as opposed to what it was, and that's not necessarily fair. But it's just that was my hope, that was my expectation, and that was kind of dashed. And in spite of that, by the end, I really did enjoy it. That final boss was a huge power fantasy.
Yeah.
It was also even fucking stupid.
Yeah, it was.
It made no sense, but it was still really cool.
The other two bosses. This was one of my not complaints. I was just disappointed because the other two boss fights I thought were really awesome. Mm-hmm. And I wanted more boss fights.
What, Lord like Nicholas?
That. And then the basically the guy who wanted you burned because he thought you were like a witch. In the very beginning, it was like chapter 2.
Oh yeah.
In the town.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
You could call it a boss fight, I guess. It was really just
I don't disagree with that.
Introducing concepts to you.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there were more boss fights like that.
Yeah. The end is just like rats are fighting rats. Hugo has the power to wield rats, and so does the head of the leader of the Inquisitors, or what was he like? He was just like a
yeah. He's the Grand Inquisitor.
Like theoretically, like those cats would just fuck. Like they wouldn't, they wouldn't fight each other. Like just because they're white and one is white and one is black. Like it just didn't make any sense. It was silly. That was the part of the game that turned me off. The only good purpose it served is that it was like this mystery of why the Inquisitors are after Hugo. Like, why is this happening? Throughout the whole game, you're wondering. Yeah. Then when they finally reveal it, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the problem was that I cared less about Vitalis than I did Nicholas, who we had already killed at that point.
Yeah, they kind of swapped the main villain or the main antagonist about halfway through the game when they introduced Vitalis, and we think that Nicholas, who kills your father at the beginning and seemingly kills your mother, we're led to believe he's the main baddie.
Yeah.
Which works when you have a situation like, Return of the Jedi, where Darth Vader's still there and Luke is still facing Darth Vader too. It's just now you got the Emperor there too. But Vitalis really isn't he's connected to the story. He just never plays a direct major role until the end.
His motivation is mostly just world domination. Which I guess, I guess, considering this game, where the time period in which this game takes place makes sense. This game takes place about 11 years, I think. I put it on the timeline.
11 years, yeah. 11 you were right. It's 11 years.
Yeah, about 11 years into the 100 Years' War, which was the war between, correct me if I'm wrong, France and England.
So the 100. Just to give a basic overview, the 100 Years' War wasn't one continuous war. Actually, at this time. What is it, 1329? I think the 1328 and 1329 is when the game takes place, I believe.
Something along those lines. I didn't put the dates.
Basically, at this point in time that the game takes place, there was very little fighting because of the Black Death. the Hundred Years' War was basically a series of conflicts between England at the time. There was no like United Britain, and France over the succession of the French throne. It was King Philip of France versus, I forget which house from England, but basically eventually it would end with the Battle of Agincourt, and I think it was Prince Edward the Black would basically.
That's all long past.
Control.
That's all long past.
That's way
past.
That's way past. But the general historical background.
Right. And yeah, that's what I was saying. Like considering where this game takes place, the time period it takes place, it mostly makes sense. With what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really liked from that perspective how like the 100 Years' War actually it's there in the game if you're looking for it, but like very realistically to people of the time, war had very little impact immediately to their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think was, again, going back to what you were saying about Vitalis, like his motives were super political, had to do with like the plague and its larger influence on Europe,
it was just,
the Pope.
It was just world domination.
Those things really had no immediate impact on the characters.
Right.
Other than like taking Hugo.
Well, yeah, taking him to harness his ability to control the rats through this macula. I still don't like it as a concept, but
the macula doesn't like him. He just keeps shouting that during that whole fight.
Ooh, can we talk about those nasty thick ass syringes that they use to inject Vitalis? Ugh, so gross.
They did that kind of shit. They did that with the pox. They would like cut you open and take people's warty skin from the pox and put it onto your skin to immunize you.
Gah. I want to talk about the greater ending, which Vitalis being defeated, him dying, and 3 days later, there's no more plague and there's no more rats, and Hugo and Amicia with Lucas and their mother are on their way to a harbor to find a new home and get away from all this. How did we feel about that? Is it too?
I don't like happy endings. I feel like I wish it would have ended a little morally gray, kind of like The Last of Us did, but not exactly like The Last of Us, of course. And I won't say what that was.
Thank you.
But no, just like something that maybe led to a future game or had an opening for one. Not that there needs to be one, but kind of left an opening for one.
We will get to that at the end of the show because that's confirmed happening.
It's kind of hard. So I agree with you, Delilah, in that, like, yeah, I would have loved to have seen a more morally gray ending. But the thing is, like, even though The Last of Us's ending is morally gray, it's still like a full arc for Joel. Like he completes his arc, and like given I'm trying to find a way to say this without spoiling it. Given the archetype he's meant to fit into, like it makes sense, and that's what you would do, but it's still morally gray. I don't know, given the story they set up, how they would have done that with what they had here, because I was thinking the same thing that you're thinking now, and the story here is definitely a lot more black and white. I think it's a problem of setting and how they set it up.
Yeah. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I thought it was initially I thought it was really abrupt because I thought it ended right after you kill Vitalis. And the camera just kind of zooms in on Hugo looking all menacing, and then it cuts to credits. I knew there
was going to be a post-credit scene this time.
Yeah.
I stayed through the credits.
Oh, good. I'm so proud of you.
Well, I didn't know, but I figured.
Well, this was like a playable post-credits kind of deal, so it was like more mid-credits. But
it was a hidden trophy.
It wasn't like I mean, I guess there was some dread, some thought to be had about like where are they going to go. They're all wanted. Like the town people were on the lookout for them. How like the two people that they talked to didn't recognize them is beyond me. And the mother was still recovering from being sick. Melly kind of just like pieced the fuck out. Seemingly because she was seemingly it like from what I gathered, she was freaked out by Hugo's abilities. Whether or not that's true, I guess, is up for debate. But
honestly, it doesn't. They don't. All that's said is, Amicia gives Hugo the kind of bullshit answer. She had other things to do.
Yeah,
that's literally all that's said. So you could. It's really up to your interpretation. You could interpret it. She blames them for her brother's death. There's a whole bunch of things.
That's the thing. Okay, that's where I wanted to go with my gripes with the ending, is that Amicia and Hugo have been through so much shit. Like, why? Like, you saw her like being a little dark sometimes, but like, why is she still so chill? Like, the townspeople were still, after the plague's over, kind of looking at them like black sheep, like people that didn't belong there, that they didn't want around. You know, like I feel like there should have just been a little more darkness to that ending, considering all they went through.
That's my biggest complaint with the game, and particularly the story, is I wanted that Sarah Connor transformation. You understand what I'm saying, though, right?
Well, that doesn't. Well, consider the following: the Sarah Connor transformation doesn't happen by the end of Transformers. Jesus, by the end of Terminator, it really kicks in when you get to Terminator 2. Maybe it's the same case here.
Well, you see the full blown at Terminator 2, but at the end of Terminator 1, she goes from a hapless waitress who is kind of doughy-eyed to, she says, "You're terminated, fucker." She says, "You're terminated, fucker," and kills the killer machine in the fucking in the plant, in the crusher thing.
From what I remember, that was still out of desperation, though. Yeah, I know, but
still. But you understand what what I'm saying is.
I do.
I wanted to see, like Delilah said, more definite toughness.
To contrast, she's the one that flings a fucking rock in his face 3 times and kills him.
Right, but she flings a rock in his face.
Go ahead.
Kills him.
I wanted to see her take a spear, run through all those white-ass rats, and shove it up his neck. Which, by the way, let me ask. Every other enemy in the game, if they have an exposed head, gets killed with 1 rock to the head. Yet this old-ass dude who's kept alive from vials of shit, it takes 3 rocks to kill this motherfucker to the head.
You didn't see the first 2 times? Right when she flung it, a rat jumped out and took the bullet for him. I'm just kidding.
Are you joking?
I'm making that up, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually believed you. I was like, did that happen?
No. Yeah, but that wouldn't be an exciting final boss, Jason.
No, I know. I'm playing, but I agree with Delilah's fundamental problem. It's one of the 2 problems I had is I didn't feel a satisfying conclusion to her arc, in that I didn't feel like she was fully transformed in the way I thought she was going from where she started.
Yeah.
I don't know that I fully agree, but it is what it is. I will agree that maybe things were a little too jolly in the end. Again, like it was established during that epilogue, they're on the run.
Yeah.
They're still wanted. People are still looking for them. So Amicia being so careful throughout the entire game and suddenly being so carefree in this epilogue, mere days after all that shit happened, is a little off-putting. But I could also understand why they would be a little joyous just from the fact that, hey, we survived that and the rats are gone. Shit's looking up. You know?
And to play devil's advocate to myself, and this, I only bring it up because it goes into like my other kind of now this wasn't as big of a problem for me. I think the focus they may have been going for wasn't necessarily Amicia becoming a badass as much as just the blossoming relationship between these 2 siblings who have barely known each other,
and I think that
them
actually
becoming friends.
I think that actually is more so what their focus was. I mean, look at if we look at
Yeah.
their two influences, The Last of Us is entirely a story about Joel and Ellie's relationship. That's where I'm going to leave that at. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons is just that. It's a tale
But
of
The Last
two
of Us,
sons.
but The Last of Us, is ultimately Joel's arc.
I wouldn't agree with that, but again, we're not here to discuss that.
Yeah, we're not here to debate that, but the only reason I point out that, aside from the fact that I think that focus would take away from a little bit from Amicia's transformation, is also that I felt like there wasn't enough in the beginning or the first half of the game of friction between Hugo and Amicia. There was a little bit.
Sure. That mostly comes to a point in the beginning of the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Or the third quarter, if you will.
We'll see. There's only really like 2 points I can think of. One is when is it when they get to the alchemist and she like shoves him aside, or is it when they're in the first town?
When they're in the first town and the old lady takes them in.
Yeah.
He runs away because she
like pushes him. Right.
There's a few times where friction occurs between them. There's that instance in the town. There's the instance with Laurentius where Hugo gets very upset with Amicia. There's the bit where they sacrifice a pig to the rats to get by, and Hugo did not like that.
Well, I don't really see that as like friction between them as much as like he's just being a kid.
But it still is some sort of friction.
Well, there has to be friction. She's a kid taking care of a kid that she is her brother that she barely knows, you know. I definitely sense that throughout the game. And that was actually the strong point. I just feel like coming out of that, she should have just had a little more darkness to her.
I guess by friction, I more mean like direct anger between the two of them. Like, I didn't feel like they hated each other right off the bat. And then overall, like,
well, they started off.
I'm not saying it's like a failed arc. Like, overall, I thought it was satisfactory. I'm just saying I felt like it was a little rushed.
Okay. Sure. I don't know that I completely agree, but that's neither here nor there.
It's just my opinion.
I know. It's just like my opinion, man. It's all right.
That's what we're here for, opinions.
It's just like your opinion, man.
The relationship between them, I thought, was from top to bottom very very believable. I thought it was a good, convincing sibling relationship. I think she gave up a little early on when he ran away towards the end.
Well, first of all, how the fuck she like just runs out and runs into a ravine, and I was just thinking,
well, she got knocked out.
No, I was just thinking, where the fuck are you going? How do you have any fucking idea which direction he ran off?
I don't know. I think we could chalk. I think we can maybe chalk that up to game design. It was just like,
yeah, I know.
Oh, that's definitely where he ran.
I'm being an asshole looking for plot holes now, and just for fun.
And I don't know, because I mean, there were several times where I felt like Amicia was slowly becoming like a seasoned murderer trying to survive. Not a murderer, that's not the right word to use, but someone trying to survive and save.
It definitely comes out more in the gameplay.
In the gameplay only, well, exactly.
But I think there's a lot to say about that. I think there's a lot to say about the storytelling that gameplay can provide, because with this game, it's so stealth oriented, but you don't have to play it that way. If you want to, you could murder almost every guy once you are given the first chance to.
I always killed every guy.
Well, it was a lot easier to do that, I would argue, but there's a lot to be said about the story that the gameplay itself tells. With, you can either throw a pot and distract that guard, or you can throw that
fuck pots.
You could throw that thing on his head that makes him take off his helmet and slug him.
All I wanted was leather and fabric, and it kept giving me fucking pots, and I never used pots.
I stopped using pots really early on because I just started murdering everybody. But yeah,
exactly.
That's kind of my point, and I feel like maybe maybe it could have come out more if they had implemented some sort of way where the more people you killed, things in the story would change. Maybe get a different scene or two that shows Amicia as a darker person. I don't think that was necessary or would be necessary. I think what we got is great and fine in terms of her character, but I think maybe that could have helped the whole idea of your whole Sarah Connor transformation idea.
The only part where I did see some sort of transformation is when she killed that first guy in the town, the boss that Jason was talking about earlier.
That's the first time where they definitely make it very obvious and show the player like
everything slowed down, and she was like sweating, like in her head, like holy shit, I just killed someone, and like
right.
You felt the intensity of like her having blood on her hands for the first time.
They also might have been trying to hold back a bit because remember the game is called A Plague Tale: Innocence.
And Innocence
they might have been
is a
trying,
big theme.
Yeah, they might have been trying to hold back to kind of show the attempt to maintain some semblance of innocence in a ridiculously grim and morbid environment.
Absolutely.
Which would work against what I guess Delaila and I were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Until A Plague Tale 2, not so innocent.
Not so innocent. A Plague Tale, guilty.
Guilty as charged. You're sucking my macula.
Jesus Christ. So yeah, how did you guys feel about the stealth? That was kind of our main form of gameplay. Was kind of sneaking around, if not guards, kind of sneaking around rats using fire to get by. How did we feel about this from a gameplay perspective?
I thought it was great. It's basically the whole game's a puzzle. Right?
Yeah.
You're not really and like hand-to-hand combat.
It's all about level design.
Not a particularly hard puzzle though.
No, they were very simple.
Yeah.
Nothing.
But they were the levels were punishing though if you didn't pay attention to the surroundings, if you didn't kind of plan out what you were going to do. It didn't take necessarily that long, but like if you just like walked out without just taking a moment to survey what was ahead of you.
Yeah, and there were
especially early on when you didn't really have any ways out if you got caught.
Yeah, because you're kids, so if a guard sees you, it's gonna kill you and run after you and beat you.
That got really frustrating by the end, where there were just like a ton of guards, and even if I started to go like just guns blazing, quote unquote, like I had people throwing fucking spears at me and shooting arrows at me, and one hit just like totally downed me, which I get, like I understand the logistics of that, but it doesn't make it, I don't know, suck any less.
I will say that some of the delineations between fail states were a bit blurry. This were some examples where this really came to the forefront for me. Where exactly the border was between the area of light and where the rats would start to eat you happened a lot for me. Yes. Where I was trying to edge my way out, and suddenly, even though I was still very much in the light, I would start getting eaten by rats with, and no way to walk back in. I would get guards I would be detected, and like a guard would throw a spear at me, and even though I was crouched solidly behind wood, the animation would just like shift my body out just far enough for me to get hit by the spear or the whatever it was, an arrow if it was archer. Little shit like that did get annoying, but overall I very much enjoyed the stealth mechanics.
Yeah, I thought it was solid stealth. Worked really well in favor of the gameplay. It was well executed just from a technical standpoint. I didn't really have many complaints with it, especially during the chapter with when you're playing as Hugo, and you have absolutely no way of fighting back. I thought that was really well designed, really
that was so good,
and it was stressful too.
So good,
it was really stressful.
Yeah, because like he's tiny, so he's able to go through like vents and like under tables and through drawers and stuff like that. So it was like a cool like level design perspective playing as Hugo
and following Lord Nicholas.
I also liked how they used that as a method of indirect exposition, even though like we said earlier, it kind of had no direct impact on the immediate story. Because like if you were listening to all the magisters, and eventually you get to a point where an archbishop who is sent by the Pope comes to see the Grand Inquisitor, like they're basically talking about the politics of the Catholic Church and the greater politics of the plague itself.
Yeah, and flat out calls him a heretic because he's trying to like they know about the experiments that he's running, and he's trying to harness this power, and it's like,
oh, even before the cutscene, even before that,
okay.
when you're actually in the gameplay, if you're listening to the magisters that you're sneaking around, they're talking about the politics of the Catholic Church, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So the stealth, I think we all liked the stealth. Here's another thing I didn't like, and what stopped me from liking the game for a little while. Immediately after it decides to introduce crafting, which crafting
literally has the same UI as the Last of, or looks very similar to the Last of Us's UI.
My bigger problem is like, because once they introduce alchemy, I'm like, okay, I'm on board with this. I'm on board with
alchemy was probably the best part of the game.
Yeah, like
aside from the stealth.
Once it gets to a point where Amicia is like a budding alchemist that's learning, and Lucas is like teaching her, and she's trying to take after her mother. Like I liked that bit, but like early on, where it's like, yeah, you have a sling and you can upgrade it. It's like, oh, come on. That bit was just unnecessary, and having to scavenge for supplies, I guess specific supplies to upgrade your sling and your equipment, whatever. I felt like it was an unnecessary addition. Once we got to alchemy, I turned the other way a little bit, but everything before that, I just wasn't.
The only thing that pissed me off wasn't the upgrading itself. I was fine with. What pissed me off was I don't know if resources were distributed via RNG or if they were designed with resources set where they were set.
I think they were set.
I think they're set, yeah.
But like, I scoured this game. I somehow still was not able to find all the collectibles, even though like I went through every. I don't know.
Some of them were really well hidden.
But yeah, and like nooks and crannies, they didn't like shine like everything else did in the game, that you could pick up like all the resources and materials. But I could not find enough leather and fabric to like I'm like one or two upgrades away from having all the upgrades, but still like it just I constantly was full of fucking like saltpeter and the sulfur and all the other shit, but like fucking leather and fabric, man.
I was able to upgrade everything by the last chapter. Sorry, go ahead, Delaila.
No, I was going to say the same exact thing. I was like, I didn't really have an issue because at the very end, I was able to do it. Like at a certain point, they give you a bunch of materials on a table right before the end. And I was like, oh, thank God, because otherwise I would have had to play the game over. And I wasn't using a guide for collectibles. And that's part of the platinum.
Well, there is. I was actually going to ask you guys, for the purposes of trophies, is it like New Game Plus when you go to chapter select?
I didn't even bother. Like I had just done chapter select to pick up whatever flowers I missed or whatever, but I had all the upgrades that I needed for my sling and shit like that.
The funny thing is,
but you had all the upgrades,
so I didn't have all the upgrades. The ones that I didn't do were at all the alchemy upgrades because they weren't required for the plat. But I did go back to two.
What? Then I should have gotten
the alchemy.
Medal,
the alchemy.
The alchemy were the only ones I didn't finish.
We can look at your trophies later. I did double back to 2 chapters. Unfortunately, the 2 chapters I had to double back to for like other miscellaneous trophies. It was during times where I didn't have equipment, so I couldn't even open the menu. So yeah, I can't confirm that, but
The sling is what we were talking about, right? Like you had an issue with that, right? The upgrades.
I just didn't like, having an upgrade system. I didn't feel it was necessary. Again, I wanted this to be purely a just a narrative focused experience that wasn't too gamified. Obviously, it needs to be gamified in some way. And I thought alchemy, just leaving it at alchemy, would have been the perfect way to do it. You start as you go. You start learning new recipes, and you have to still get materials to make them, but that's all it is.
Here's the problem. To just kind of, and I'm not saying that I necessarily disagree with you. I'm just saying from a game design perspective, like I guess if I was one of the people designing this game, without some of those upgrades to the sling, like being able to knock off a helmet with it or to
But there was an
do two shots
but
to
there
do
was an
two shots in
alchemy.
progression.
But there was an alchemy solution to that, an alchemic solution to that.
No. Just let me finish.
You're saying the strength of the sling, like
well,
it actually being able to
be
hit
able
off
to
a helmet.
handle to be able to handle multiple enemies at the same time without having to switch between shit in the menu, which doesn't pause the game. The game's still running as you're in the menu to
at
switch.
A slower pace.
No, it doesn't. It's full speed.
Oh.
I trust me. I tested it.
Maybe just when you're switching ammo. Is what I'm thinking of.
That's what I'm saying when you're switching ammo.
Okay.
In order to have sequences like say the Roderick sequence when he's pushing the cart, the Roderick sequence when he's pushing the cart,
and the archers are
and you have
killing him.
you have like 3 guys running at you at one time. Mm-hmm. Without those upgrades, you would not be able to have that sequence.
But that's excusing the mechanics in favor of what's already there. What I'm saying is find different design solutions that allow for the different enemies to be there that can be handled via alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to everything needing or having to be handled by the sling.
No, that's a perfectly fair argument. I was just playing devil's advocate.
I get
if I was a designer of the game.
I get it. I didn't hate the sling. I mean, I obviously liked the sling. It was fitting. It was fine. I just didn't like how. Oh yeah, there's a crafting system and an upgrade system because of course there is. It's 2019. We need to have that in all video games. I was hoping for something different, I guess. Again, this is another...
So she could have had her sling upgraded to do those things, but we didn't have to craft for it. It would have just been happening as the story progressed,
or even have it as more of a gimped solution. It's harder to do things that way, but if that's how you want to do it, go for it.
Or be able to light like multiple enemies on fire with the big, what was it? Not Ignis, the bigger fire.
Oh, that took a lot of resources.
Yeah, including crafting resources like leather.
It was the lumen something.
Yeah, it was a really weird word.
Yeah, basically, I think what Mark is saying is turn that into napalm, so you could
No. I wouldn't say that. I would say upgrading the sling made it into an easier experience, but give me just a basic ass sling that can't be upgraded. I can use it. It'll help in certain situations, but not all, and I can't make it better like being able to throw 2 rocks in quick succession or honing in on targets easier, because even from an upgrade perspective, that doesn't make sense most of the time.
But if you're in a quick-paced action sequence like the same one I was talking about where you got 3 or 4 guards coming at you at once, you still need a way to deal with that.
Rebalance it is what I'm getting at. Rebalance it so you don't need an upgrade system for your sling. Rebalance it so that you have this thing that you can use if the opportunity allows it, if it suggests it. Otherwise, you have all this alchemy and you start unlocking more of those. Use those to your advantage. That's kind of what I would have preferred, as opposed to balance by upgrading your equipment. Because to me, thematically, and at the time, it kind of just took me out of it a little bit. As soon as crafting was revealed to the player, I just rolled my eyes.
Do you not like crafting in general, or just for this specific type of narrative-driven game?
Yeah, I think there's some fatigue there. It's
okay.
I think that's what it is. I think there's just some fatigue.
Gotcha.
I feel you.
There's nary a time where a game at this point doesn't have some sort of upgrade system.
Right.
And I don't think it's always necessary. In this game, I feel like it was very unnecessary. I feel like it could have been balanced to not have that, and it would have been a much more relatable experience, I guess.
Gotcha.
I think, and also I think that a lot of that took away from the real star, which was the alchemy. I think the alchemy was a really cool concept and really worked in favor of Amicia and the characters around her. Her growing closer with Lucas. He was teaching her alchemy and helping her come into her own. Her relationship with her mother, who was an alchemist, trying to cure Hugo of this thing. I think that should have been more of the focus a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Instead of, I have a thing that throws rocks real hard. I can upgrade that to throw 2 rocks real hard. I feel like there could have been some differences there that would have been better to me at the very least.
Again, I don't disagree. I just was playing devil's advocate for the purpose of conversation.
I totally understand. The collectibles were brought up. What did we think of? There were 3 different main types of collectibles. There was the curiosities, the gifts, and flowers. Did we like those?
The flowers were the best. I love that.
They were really cool. Yeah.
I loved it so much. Like, there was 1 flower per level, and Amicia would find it, and Hugo would be like, "Ooh!" and he would look at the flower, and that was like a really like sweet moment between them every time. And he would take it and put it in her hair, and she would have it for the entire level in her hair. That was adorable.
Yeah. And even the chapters where they weren't together, which was most of the latter half of the game. If Amicia would find a flower and just put it in her hair, saying, "Oh, Hugo would love this."
Yeah.
And that was really cool. And I did really enjoy it. The gifts were also like neat. It was neat to see them all in the Chateau d'Ombrage. When in the chapters that you were there, anything that you'd collected would be sitting on that cabinet, and that was a neat little touch. I'm happy.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
I like moments when games like acknowledge the things that the player is doing, and seeking out those items and showing the player like, you collected all these things, look at that, and they're right here and you can see them in the game world. It's nice.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a little thing, but it's a little thing I really like.
Me too.
And the curiosities kind of just gave historical background and I guess additional narrative information. Those were fine too. We were talking about earlier, I thought a lot of them were kind of hard to find. I did use a guide. I have no shame.
No shame in that.
I didn't really want to.
For the collectibles, you would kind of have to.
Not all of them, but I definitely use it for some of them.
I didn't use a guide until I cleaned up with chapter select.
Because like some of the collectibles were, and I didn't get all of them, but some of them were like you had to walk right into like a random corner, and I was trying to do that on my playthrough on my own, and I still didn't find all of them.
Yeah, but, the good thing is they have chapter select, so.
Yeah, and going with a chapter select approach, this kind of doubles. We can jump from collectibles just to kind of like the locales you go to and kind of exploration of it all. It's kind of limited because of the whole chapter structure, which was a little disappointing, I guess. Certain chapters had like puzzles that served that only served to move you forward with the plot, and some of them were really interesting to explore with what little you could. Mostly Chateau d'Ombrage, because there were lots of additional places you could go find while in there, whether or not there was a threat going on. There was that. Did you guys both? Oh, I know Delilah did. I don't know if you did, Jason. Did you find like the tomb of the soldier?
Yeah, I got the trophy for the one. It's called like tribute or whatever, the trophy.
Yeah, something like that.
And then you can go back later after Hugo runs away. You can go back down there and they've set up a stand, and you can pray to the soldier to watch out for Hugo.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's something. We don't normally talk about trophies much, but like the additional trophies for doing additional things in chapters were really cool.
Especially the last one, the Roderick's Forge.
Finding Roderick's Forge, yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about the additional crew. I kind of want to jump back and talk about the rest of the party. We had Lucas, Melly, Arthur, and Roderick. 2 of those, Arthur and Roderick, the last 2, wound up sacrificing themselves, basically for the siblings. Did we like these characters? How did we feel about these characters? I personally really liked Roderick. Arthur was nothing.
Yeah, Arthur kind of sucked mainly because we didn't see him for most of the game.
Yeah.
The most we saw him was like for a few minutes before he died.
And so
it was kind of meaningless.
The only big thing that really came to be with his involvement in the story was just like, well, besides his sacrifice, was he and Melly's disagreement about leaving or staying. And
yeah, they I can't remember if it was Melly or Arthur that was like, we can't roll with these people, basically.
Arthur.
You can't.
Arthur's
Arthur, right?
wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Arthur kind of just served as a like a proxy for Melly's character.
Yeah.
Like, basically, her motivations changed based on Arthur's situation.
This is true, and yeah, this is true, and her outlook seemingly by the end completely changes, based on the outcome that we got.
Yeah.
Considering she leaves everyone behind.
You know, all four of them had pretty distinct personalities. Obviously, we don't really know Arthur's personality, but they all, to the extent that we interacted, they had distinct personalities. I was hoping that they would all make it through, mainly just so that we could have like a good setup for like a second game where you kind of have your new Derun estate complete with a blacksmith, an apprentice alchemist, and 2 thieves. But it's not to be. All you got is an apprentice alchemist.
Yeah,
apprentice alchemists, really.
Or yeah, if
now at this point, yeah. I mean, they mostly served as gameplay points, like Roderick, for you to be able to beat guards down, without having to get crafty. Melly for mostly stealth sequences, and Lucas for the alchemy introduction. But in terms of their characters, the only one that was mostly believable was Roderick. Melly, because she was like, "What? Fuck this shit!" Like, she was having an actual reaction to what was going on. Meanwhile, everyone was kind of rolling with the punches a little too much.
Yeah,
she was just like, she was actually like conflicted about this situation, which I think most people would be. Most people are in this current state.
Yeah,
I can for Lucas, I would argue it's his perspective is a little more understandable just because he's basically been in that shack with the master alchemist for like his entire life. So like to him, like this is his destiny, and he believes in this almost as if it's like a holy, what's the word I'm looking for? A holy task, a holy mission.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you with Roderick though. Although, like I was just saying before, if you like, there are moments, particularly, I mean, optional moments. If you go and find his forge, and that's the last chapter. You can actually unlock the alleyway that leads to his father's forge, and it's been completely destroyed.
Yeah.
It shows like an emotional side of him, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm just glad they didn't do any romance between any of these characters.
Yeah, and I was expecting it because that's the obvious thing to expect. But
so was I. Yeah,
I'm happy that it didn't happen.
Yeah, same.
Because it was different. That does not defy my expectations in a good way. I don't expect that to last forever. With this now seeming franchise, but I was happy with that too.
I will say one thing that kind of bugged me was that there didn't seem to be much friction between any of these characters in Amicia. Like every one of these characters, while you were interacting with them, Amicia would just be like, "Wow, you are like a character from a storybook," or something like along those lines.
God.
Like no matter what character it was.
Can we talk about the best and most short-lived character? Which
one?
Leon.
Oh no!
Yeah, that was
See, this
was a big fucking bummer.
The first chapter was like had the most drama going on, like kind of like the first chapter of The Last of Us. It's like shit's going down. I'm sorry to keep comparing, but like the game was obviously influenced from it, and these are moments that you could really see it was blatant. The chapter starts.
The structure of the storytelling, it's episodic, like The Last of Us. Like,
yeah, she's like training with her dad. It's bright and sunny. I was like, oh, fuck this game. This game's like, I thought this game was gonna be good. Like, this seems a little boring. I'm like practicing with my
Everything's
sling
happy.
with my dad.
I thought this game was gonna be good.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, she's like playing fetch with her dog, and her dog runs away, and she goes to find him, and then he gets like sucked in this hole and dies like in the first 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
Or less. And I was like, no, like, what the fuck is happening? And that's when I started to be interested, of course.
Gruesome death occurs. Oh.
Yeah, that was sad, though.
I want more
Doggies.
of that.
R.I.P. Doggy.
He's such a good boy. You could pet him. Twitter account,
Yeah.
Can you pet the dog, was definitely like, yes, you could pet the dog in A Plague Tale: Innocence.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leon was a good boy.
Yeah.
Still not as moving as as Marley from I Am Legend, but
God damn it. Stop,
or the
stop. I know what you're gonna say.
The
Stop.
Omega Man, if you're thinking about the book, but
all right, I don't know what you're gonna say, but regardless.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
No, I have no idea, but we're moving on. So do we have anything else that we want to bring up? Is there anything we missed? Anything else you guys want to talk about? Did we overall I think we all overall enjoyed this game, even if it did like kind of even if we did all have like somewhat different expectations for what it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I liked a lot of the twists, especially like I said in the beginning of the game. I felt like the game was really tense all the time, and I appreciated that in the gameplay and the story and everything. I actually did not expect Beatrice de Rune to still be alive. I thought she died.
Well, they made it pretty convincing.
It was extremely convincing. In the first chapter, her whole family's fucking slaughtered, basically. and then later you find out like it was actually her doing the killing, which made her a badass instead of just a bitchy mother who neglects her daughter. So yeah, I
wait. What? Repeat that. Her doing the killing.
She was the one that killed the sword that went through the door when
I thought that was the servant dying.
Yeah.
In her place, yeah.
Well, yeah, but then she killed her way to get out of that situation, didn't she?
Well, she was captured.
Oh, she was okay. Sorry,
I
forgot. It's been a while.
I was like, what?
It's been a while. But all in all, like the point is, she, you realize like she's a badass, like she's an alchemist. She was basically she had her own like hidden.
She's even talked
like
about
alchemy chamber.
She's even talked about by the English as if she's like this very skilled, educated woman. Like you do hear mumblings of how impressive she is, which builds up the legend of her a little bit, considering how little we actually see of her throughout the game.
Yeah,
and the fact that she's still alive, obviously, also aids with
Lucas.
That.
And Lucas, as you go deeper into like crypts with him to try to find this special elixir. Apparently she's been working on shit and this was a cool little bit of history they bring in that goes back to like the Holy Roman times and the Roman era, where like you're going through crypts with symbology from like fucking Roman mythology that, obviously we talked a bit about how the supernatural nature kind of for us felt a little off. But it was cool how they tied it in, where like this is shit that dates back apparently, and
they like
has been coming back
the plague,
over and over again.
The plague of Justinian comes into the plot with the one mural, and that's when the Prima Macula was. I think that was essentially when it was born.
Which would mean
during that plague, and then passed down during the lineage of the de Runes.
Right. Which would mean that the de Runes can tie their lineage all the way back to the Holy Roman Emperors. And
right. Yeah.
Although I will say one thing about Beatrice de Rune that it didn't make me not like her, just confused me, is why exactly Hugo was always separated from Amicia.
I guess to hide to claim that he was sick, but hide what he was sick from. Because they very, very clearly wanted to keep him in hiding from the English Inquisition that was looking for him. So claiming he's sick and isolating him from everyone else hides what the actual
Well, it wasn't
deal
the English
is.
Inquisition, but yeah, the Inquisition.
You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah. Sorry, I'm just being an asshole.
I know you always
history
are. Okay.
buff.
But that's why I would assume that was done was to claim he was sick but hide what he was really sick with.
Yeah.
From the rest of the world. That included hiding it from Amicia.
Yeah, I guess the less people that know, the more likely it's going to stay a secret, the safer they are.
It's true. We didn't want
Fair enough.
Didn't want the town crier.
It's not like a story-breaking thing. It was just a bit of confusion by the end of the story that I still had.
Indeed.
But overall, I thought even with my criticisms, I thought it was a very well executed story overall.
The level designs were excellent.
Yeah. Yes.
The gameplay is definitely what shines, I felt, the most.
So, Jason, I guess I should ask now. I feel like we've summed up all of our thoughts. Before I get to the final question, though, what's the Kwasnicki rating on this bad boy?
8 3/4 rats.
8 3/4 rats. An 8.75 rats.
A headless 8 and a headless rat.
Damn. Okay, there you have it. This might be the highest rated game Jason has given.
That's true.
I think 8.
I believe I gave RE2 a 9.
I don't know that we were doing the Kwasnicki rating back then.
Well, I would have given it a 9.
Word.
Okay. Which is why I think RE2 would still remain my 2019.
Oh, definitely. That and Sekiro are neck to neck for my 2019.
I still have to play Sekiro, but yeah.
But this, I will agree. This was a highlight of last year. Even though I didn't play it until obviously this year, 2020. This was a better game than This was a very good game. It was an enjoyable experience. I had.
Were you about to say it's a better game than fucking? I don't even remember the name of the game anymore. Kojima's game.
No, I wasn't gonna say it's better.
Death Stranding.
Death Stranding.
I was not gonna say it's better than Death Stranding, but
it's definitely top 10. 2019, top 10.
Well, I guess I'll just ask the final question, and we've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but a sequel was confirmed to be in development in December this past year, with a seemingly expected release date in 2022.
Oh.
After that ending, where can it go? Where do we want it to go? Do the rats somehow come back? I mean, if there's no rats, why call it a plague tale? There's no plague.
Right. Yeah.
So there was a reason I brought up the Holy Roman Empire a bit, because if they're of the lineage of Justinian, you would have to assume it's not like it's one fucking line, like there are branching paths. And I was thinking the same exact. Now, granted, this isn't what's going to happen. What's going to happen is we're going to get a game that's based on these same characters. But what I would wish would happen and what I would do if I was in charge of making the game is I would set it in a completely different location in Europe during the same time that this game takes place.
And that's what I was about to suggest. Be a different
branch of the family, like go to Spain where the actual Inquisition took place, go to Italy, go to Northern Europe, anywhere, yeah.
I would say just do another plague tale. It's another, not even related to the Darunes. Find a different family, group of people, what have you, and focus on them. I feel like could be a way to do it.
To maintain the relationship, it would still have to be tied to like the macula and the
maybe even have it in a different location. Maybe have it in a different location, and it happens to be the location that Amicia and Hugo, Beatrice and Lucas travel to, and they're still dealing with it for some reason. Like that location is still dealing with the rats and the plague.
You could go or you can go back in time, since we know that this is something that's happened multiple times in the past. You can go even back to the Holy Roman Empire itself, which is like basically Greece, Turkey, more the Mediterranean.
Could find a way to they could double back all the way to the plague of Justinian that this game brought up as part of the story with that same family. I could see that as a viable way. Delilah, do you have any
I kind of don't want it to be with Amicia and Hugo as the main characters. I feel like with Hugo, with his power at this point, it would just be what that end of A Plague Tale: Innocence was.
Yeah, where do you go?
Like you just control the rats. Okay, so a plague doesn't really impact you. In fact, it empowers you.
Basically, the plague comes back and all the villagers start panicking, and Hugo just step back, bitch. Just check this out. And like, it would basically be the same problem like Matrix Reloaded ran into, where it's like, okay, Neo is the one, now what?
Yeah.
Well, we got some good ideas, so clearly, like Asobo, if you're hiring and looking for some talented young writers, you could hit us up anytime.
Actually, I believe in French it's Asoba.
Right. So I think we can safely wrap this bad boy up. This is a little bit of a shorter one, but thank you for staying with us till the end.
It's a bit of a shorter game.
Yeah. There was a lot to talk about, but I feel like none of it took up a lot of time.
It was very concise, the plot.
Yes.
Like there was you could really boil it down to like 3 or 4 of the chapters that had big plot movement.
I want to
most of it in between was more just character development.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unlike the last 5 games that we did Spoilercast on, there was no like speculating what deep philosophical meanings things had or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. It was all pretty clear cut.
But that generally makes for a better story, which is why this game did so well.
Agreed. So thank you for listening to this fine episode of Reap the Spoils. Delilah, you what are you doing? This is how I ask you for plugs every month.
I just I've been streaming a little more often since I'm working from home, but still mainly Sundays I've been streaming Judgment, but soon that'll be Doom Eternal on twitch.tv/Assassina-san with an underscore in the middle of Assassina and San. It's pretty much it, and releasing a Star Wars complete it or beat it episode soon.
For Jedi Fallen Order.
Jedi Falling Order, reviewing the trophies for that game. And New York City Gamer Society podcast that we started up not too long ago, an episode just released where we talk about our best and worst moments in gaming, which was pretty fun. Yeah.
Can we get like a teaser? What's your worst moment in gaming?
I had to choose several, and I didn't put them in order.
Pick what's your favorite one?
Worst?
Your favorite, your worst or your favorite worst, whatever. Maybe there's overlap there.
The time that I spent $5 just to get a platinum in Deus Ex Mankind Divided.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah. I'm not proud of it.
Man, I actually I wish I could have been on that episode. I have some stories to tell that are really embarrassing.
I could just invite you guys to the group, and we asked for video submissions from the group as well. Okay. So I don't know why I haven't done that already. I thought I had you guys there, but whatever. I'm a little bit of a space cadet.
Well, to be fair, we were waiting to put you on the spot on this podcast before doing that.
The bottom line, everybody, go subscribe to Assassina-san. Go watch her on Twitch. Get your cool ass sticker.
Yeah.
You can follow Delilah on Twitter at Assassina_san. You can follow me on Twitter at Nibelheimian. You can follow Jason on Twitter at SolidQuaz, but don't follow him on Twitter. You can follow Dead Cell Media as a whole at Dead Cell Media on Twitter. We also have a Facebook group. You can find the Facebook group on Facebook. Just search Dead Cell Media. You should be able to find it. Please, if you liked this episode, if you're listening to it on iTunes, it would mean so much to me if you could rate and review it. Give it 5 stars preferably. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Go ahead, and if you're listening on YouTube, give it a like. Give us a subscribe. Give us a comment. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. And share it with your friends, your family, your pets, your kids. Maybe not your kids.
Tell us what games you want us to do in the future. Like somebody was asking about Echo the Dolphin. I think we might We might have an episode in the cards for the future. This is a packed year, but I think we might be able to make some room.
Double all the way back to the Sega Genesis, play some Echo the Dolphin, do a spoiler cast on Echo.
Hey man, there's lore. He's also in the Sonic comics. This is lore. It's deep.
Yo, Jason, what's the next game we're playing?
All right, everybody, it's happening. Final.
Oh my God.
Fantasy. 777
remake. We're playing Final Fantasy 7 remake.
Yeah, we're playing Final Fantasy 7 remake. Well, we're also playing Final Fantasy 7. We're going to do a bit of a compare, only up to the end of the Midgar section.
Yeah, so
it will be a little different.
In the very, very first episode of Reap the Spoils, we did the Resident Evil 2 remake, and leading up to it, mostly out of just never experiencing it and wanting to before jumping into the remake, I played through the original Resident Evil 2, and that actually wound up being really, really informative, beneficial, just going into the remake and having full context as to what the game used to be like. So I asked these two, hey, let's all make sure we go through the original Final Fantasy 7 up to the end of Midgar, which is the first portion of the first disc of the game, which is what the remake's basically going to be covering. We've known that for a while. It's on the back of the box. That doesn't count as a spoiler. We've known that. So
yeah,
we will be playing that next month.
And everybody who's listening, tune in. Make sure you tune in, because Mark and I, we both share a great affinity for the Final Fantasy series. But while Mark here is an unabashed Final Fantasy VII lover, I am a fake hater of Final Fantasy VII.
Yes, he is.
So this will be a podcast for the ages.
It's all right though, because your taste is confirmed shit, because your favorite is 9. Thanks for listening, everyone.
It's actually not my. Well, yeah, it is my favorite. It's not. I wouldn't say it's the best.
But... Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.